Hello, tubers and tubettes. My name is David, and I live in Northern California. If you don't know who I am, it's nice to meet you. And today we're going to go down memory lane. I was thinking about this last night. As I'm talking about different stories on YouTube, it just triggers other stories. And this is a story concerning an early job that I have. I'm going to say I was around 17, and it was a summertime job. And I remember it was supposed to be at a ranch. So it was in our local town of Newberry Springs where I grew up. So I went there, and there was a bunch of guys there, not just myself. And one of them turned out to be my brother-in-law. He ended up being my brother-in-law later. You know, he was just Ray. And so just another guy. And so we went out there, and I was kind of surprised because it's supposed to be a ranch, but I didn't see any fences or any cattle or anything like that. So I later come to find out when they explained to us what the job involved, that it was a worm ranch. They raised worms. And I was like, what is this? Well, they probably had about 30 acres there, and they already had a couple of beds that were done, you know, like maybe 50 to 100. And the beds were made up of cinder block, stacked up about three levels high, so you could kind of sit on it. It'd be like maybe about 18 inches high. Well, let me see. They're 8 inches, 8 inch by 8 inch blocks, so that would be 24 inches high. And then it had like a particle board top on it, I remember. And they were made out to be like, the beds were like, well, they had to be just under 4 feet, so maybe 3.5 feet wide and probably 7 feet long, because this 4x8 sheet of plywood or particle board had to fit on top of it to act as a lid. And then there was a rock there, or a brick or something. I think it was a brick, and it would sit on the top of it so that the wind wouldn't blow it off. So we all went out and we all looked at what was going on, and they lifted up one of the lids, and it looked like just a big, it looked like it was filled with cow manure. You know, it was all level inside there, but in the middle of it, there was a big pile of cow manure. It was a little bit higher, maybe 12 inches higher. And so they got a pitchfork, and they put the pitchfork in there, and they flipped it over, and there were just thousands of worms that were in that pile on the top of it. And then also they showed us inside there were baby worms, you know, little small ones. And then there was also eggs, little yellow yolk sacs that were eggs from the worms. So the idea behind it is that you had this, let's just say 4x8 structure, and then it was filled with what looked like manure. The top of it was had a little pile of even wetter manure. It would draw the worms up there, and I believe it was every 3 months the worms that you had inside there would double. So the idea was to have about 100,000 worms in there, and then in 3 months you'd have 200,000 worms in there. Then what they did was they had a cement truck, and we'd have to fill it up with cow manure. And then I remember it came in like a silo, so we filled it all up, and then we mixed it around in this big cement truck, and then it would dump the wet manure down a trough, and we would go down the middle of the lane, and two guys would have to help, you know, move the boards up and hold it, and then a person would be right there swinging the trough around, and then they would just dump a pile in there, you know, kind of like judging it, turn the mixer on, and then they would go to the other side and they would dump it there. So they had it pretty organized, and you had to have a guy running the cement truck, but that's basically what we were doing. And so we did it for a couple of months, and that's where I met my brother-in-law, Ray. he wasn't my brother-in-law at the time, but Ray and I became really good friends. I remember one time we went to his house and we were eating lunch because his house is pretty close to where the worm ranch was. And then he had a piano there, and I was like, oh man, who plays piano? And he said, oh, I do. And I said, oh, well, play something for me. And he goes, what do you want to hear? I go, I don't know, something like, say, classical. So he just started playing like Beethoven or something, and it was unbelievable how talented he was. And I was like, why are you working at a worm ranch? I mean, you are really, really good at piano. He goes, I actually hate playing the piano. My parents made me learn. And he said, because of that, I don't really like doing it. And he didn't get any enjoyment or any pride out of it at all because they made him do it. So went back to work, and then it was probably a couple of weeks after that, Ray came over to my house, and I think he was going to have dinner at my house, and that's when he met my sister Patty. And I mean, Patty is just Patty. She's the middle child, but my younger sister. Both my sisters are younger. And when he saw her, I never seen Ray look like this. He had like googly eyes, and he was like, who is that? I go, that's my sister Patty. And he said, she's beautiful. And I'm like, Patty? That's my sister Patty. And so yeah, he just was really enamored by her. She was very much into animals, and she just pretty much did what she wanted to do. I know in the summertime, a lot of times she would sleep out on the dock. We had a little lake with a dock, and she'd sleep out there just so she could be with the animals. Because when I grew up, you didn't let animals come into your house. Like dogs didn't come into your house. And so if she wanted to be with them, she'd have to go out on the dock and sleep out there. But Ray was really enamored with her, and eventually they ended up getting married, and they had 2 children. And that was my sister that passed away, and Ray also passed away too, so I outlived both of them. But getting back to the worm ranch, so we weren't really trying to figure anything out. We just got paid every Friday, and it was great. You know, we knew what we were doing. Then every 3 months they would take the bed, the worm bed, and we split it in half. So then we'd create another bed, and we'd have 2 there, and in 3 more months we could split it in half again, because they were populating at a rate of about every 3 months they would double. So we heard there was going to be a bunch of investors coming out, and we had to clean the place up, get everything all raked out, and we did. We spent a lot of time getting it ready for these investors. And investors came from all over the place. I mean, I remember some people coming from Sweden, coming from Europe, but they were just generally from all over the place. And we weren't there when they got there, but the place was really cleaned up. And what they were doing was they were selling these beds. If I were to try to remember what I thought they were, I think they were like $300 for a bed, maybe $50 a month for the maintenance, you know, to fill it with poop. And so these people were just grabbing them up like crazy. I mean, it was just amazing how they were grabbing them up in terms of investing in them. And so I remember before the investors came there, the guy that I work for is a father and 2 sons, but the guy that I work for was one of the sons. And he gave me a ride in his Jaguar XKE 12-cylinder. And he took me out. We were out in the desert, so he took me out on the highway. And I mean, just to listen to that engine, that V12 with fully aspirated carburetors, oh my God, it made me fall in love with Jaguars. And so, but after the investors had left, then we continued for a little bit, but we didn't build anything new. And probably had like 3,500 beds out there by that time. So it looked pretty impressive. So we came to work one day, and our foreman had our checks, and he gave us all of our checks, and he said, well, this will be the last day of your work, but they're going to pay you, you know, another week. And so here's your checks. And we were all kind of stunned. Like, what happened? I thought everything was going really good. Did we do anything wrong? No, what it was a big scam. It was an unbelievably big scam, and it made the television and everything in Barstow, where I grew up. And these guys were scammers. They were really nice to us because we were the workers. They paid us the last pay and then gave us an extra week. They were always nice to us, but they were scamming all of those investors, and they just disappeared. They left everything. Those worms, I know that they were out there in the boxes waiting for the next meal to come, or for us to go out there and water them down. And of course, we never did that. We were not working anymore, so they all died in the name of this scam. I feel worse for that, that they died. But it was a big scam, and it was my first time that I'd ever seen anything like that. It was just almost unbelievable that they were so good at it, and they even had us fooled. We thought we could be doing this job for a long, long time because of all the beds that they were going to make. But we got up to 3,500 beds, and then they collapsed the whole thing, took the money, and we don't know where they went, and I never even heard if they ever got caught or not. But I do remember the Worm Ranch, out in near Barstow, California, and I do remember that Jaguar. That was blue Jaguar, long nose on it, V12 engine, and that was how I met my brother-in-law Ray, and then I introduced him to my sister, and then the rest was history. So I just wanted to tell you guys about that, kind of a different story, back when I was 17. Thank you much, and have a great day.